Welcome to our tutorial for the Distribution Design Modeling Tool, DDMT, Loading and Creating New Designs. The Design Manager allows for the creation and loading of designs. When the application is started, the Design Manager will load automatically. You can display the Design Manager at any time by clicking the New button on the top toolbar once a design has been loaded. Let's start by creating a new design. Select the target scene for your new design, and then click the Load button. In this video, we will create a new design using the commercial and apartment complex scene. Once the scene has been loaded, you'll be able to navigate the scene and create your design. Several templates are also available. These consist of existing designs which can be modified and altered by the user. Let's load the template for the 41-unit townhouse by selecting it from the drop-down and then clicking the Load button. The scene will load first, followed by the objects in the scene. Once the loading is complete, the user will be free to modify the design. From the Design Manager, an existing saved design can also be loaded. Click the Load Design button and then select the desired design. To save a design that you've been working on, just click the Save button on the top toolbar and then select the name and location of the file. Item Catalog. The Item Catalog, which contains all available objects and tools, is available on the left side of the screen. The objects within the catalog are organized by categories to make it easier to locate the desired items. By clicking on the Civil category within the Overhead category, we can see its available items. Each available item has a thumbnail image and a short description. Another way to locate an item is to simply search for it. Start typing in the name of the desired item within the search bar. While typing, the catalog will begin populating the search results. In this demo, we will try to locate a mini-pad mount transformer. Notice that as the word mini is typed out, the catalog will begin to populate and refine the search results. We will demonstrate how to drag items into the scene and construct a design in a separate video. By clicking the cogwheel button within the item catalog, you'll be able to quickly see every item available within the catalog and also the date they were added. This is useful when a new version has been deployed to you and you're eager to see what new items are available. Clicking on the header buttons will sort the items by that header. Search capabilities are also available. Clicking on the row for any particular item will force the item catalog to locate and highlight that item for you. This will make it easy for you to drop that item into the scene. Basic scene navigation and camera views. Once a scene has been loaded, there are several mechanisms in place which will allow you to navigate the scene and locate points of interest. Let's start by loading the commercial and apartment complex scene. To look around a scene, hold down the right mouse button while moving the mouse. To quickly travel from one location to another, double-click on the ground using the left mouse button. You'll be able to quickly traverse large areas using this method. You can also use the scroll wheel to move forward and backwards. The up and down arrow keys on the keyboard can be used to move forwards and backwards. The left and right arrow keys can be used to move left and right. Notice that there is a mini-map in the top right corner of the screen. The mini-map can be easily collapsed and also expanded. There is a black marker which shows the current user position within the scene. We can zoom in and out of the minimap using the scroll wheel. While navigating around the scene, notice how the minimap updates to reflect the current user's position and those structures around that position. There are points of interest within each of the available scenes. We can quickly see these by clicking on the Points of Interest button within the minimap. To jump to a particular point of interest, just click on its corresponding menu item. Let's illustrate this by navigating to the Apartments point of interest. Alternatively, we can also just click on a point of interest shown within the minimap to jump to that location. The application has three built-in camera modes. These are 3D view, first-person view, and top-down view. Currently, we are in the 3D view. Let's click on the button for first-person view to switch into that mode. The view now changes, and we can navigate the scene on foot. As before, we can hold down the right mouse button while moving it to look around. The arrow keys can be used to walk forwards, backwards, left, and right. To navigate around the scene more quickly, the Run mode can be activated. When we navigate the scene now, you'll notice that it's much quicker. To switch into the top-down view, click the corresponding button. Notice how the view of the scene has now changed. To zoom in and out, use the mouse scroll wheel, and to pan the scene, keep the right mouse button down while moving the mouse. Dropping items. Items within the item catalog can be dropped into a scene. This is one of the core functions that will allow designs to be constructed. We learned earlier how to locate items within the catalog. Let's now use that knowledge to drag and drop a pole into the scene. By typing in "pole" in the search bar, we can quickly locate all items that match that particular keyword. Once we have located the correct pole within the search results, we can click on it and then drop it into the scene as many times as we would like. Notice how there is now a visible marker directly beneath the mouse cursor. When we click on the ground, the pole will be created at that location. Let's do this now. As items are dropped into the scene, corresponding items will be available within the Scene Objects window. The Scene Objects window offers a convenient way to quickly see which objects are within the current scene and to even search for them by name. Each object that is dropped into the scene can be given a custom name. Click the Properties button for one of the poles which was dropped into the scene. Click the Edit button and then provide a custom name for the pole. Then click the Done button. Alternatively, we can move the mouse cursor over the object in the scene and right-click on it. This will bring up a context menu, and we can select the Properties menu item. Let's now build upon one of the poles we dropped to make it more functional. Various crossarms and insulators are visible within the item catalog. Start by installing a crossarm onto the pole. A quick search for crossarm reveals several results. Let's click on the button for Double Wood Crossarm. Like with the pole, we can drop this crossarm on the ground, but we also have the option to snap it onto one of the poles. A snap point is visualized by a marker on an existing object and not the ground. By clicking on one of the snap points, the double wood crossarm is now snapped to that object. Now snap an insulator onto the wooden crossarm which we just installed. A quick search for insulator reveals a variety of available insulators, from pin insulators to post insulators. We will click on the desired insulator and then snap it to the crossarm, which is already snapped to the pole. It's easy to observe that we can now create complex structures from simpler structures. Using the control buttons, we are able to move, rotate, and delete objects. Click the Move Control button to switch into that mode, and then move the mouse cursor over the pole. Notice how the pole begins to flash. We can click on the pole using the left mouse button and then drag it around. Notice how the pole will stay pinned to the ground. Also observe how the crossarm and insulator move with the pole. This is because the crossarm is snapped to the pole and the insulator is snapped to the crossarm. Therefore, they can be manipulated as a single object. If we click on the crossarm, which is snapped to the pole, movement handles will appear that will allow us to move the crossarm relative to the pole. Let's try this again, but this time, we will move the insulator relative to the crossarm which it is snapped to. A Rotate control button is also available. This will allow us to rotate objects within the scene. Let's switch into Rotate mode and then use the left mouse button to click on the pole and rotate it. Observe how the pole rotates and how those objects snapped to it rotate with it. We can click on the crossarm, which is snapped to the pole, and then rotate it relative to the pole using the rotation handles. Notice how the insulator remains pinned to the crossarm as the crossarm is rotated. We will now switch into Delete mode and then delete the insulator, followed by the crossarm. Notice how the objects are deleted from the scene and no longer appear within the Scene Objects window. The modeling tool comes with Undo and Redo functionality. The corresponding buttons for these functions are available on the top toolbar. Let's undo the previous two deletion operations by clicking the Undo button twice. Observe how the crossarm is reinstalled, followed by the insulator. There are other operations that are available that allow the user to quickly duplicate objects within the scene and move them together as a group. Let's start by right-mouse-clicking on the pole. From the context menu, we can select the Duplicate menu item to quickly duplicate the pole. We can also copy an object and paste it as many times as we would like. This can be advantageous when we want to copy a complex structure and then paste it into a new or different scene. We will now paste the pole structure several times. Notice how the structure is duplicated perfectly each time, retaining all of its snapped objects. Holding down the left or right control key, we can draw a box around multiple items and then move them as a group. With multiple objects selected, we can right-click on the screen to bring up a context menu, and then delete all of the selected objects in one go. Customizing items. Some items can be customized further once they are dropped into the scene. Items that have customization ability will have specific badges within the item catalog. Let's take a look at the crossarm items by performing a quick search. Notice how each of these items have some badge icons. We can mouse over these to see a quick description. If we locate the available insulators, you'll notice that some of these also have some badges that we can mouse over. Remember, a badge on an item is an indicator that this item can be customized, and different badges indicate a different kind of customization. Let's drag and drop a 45-foot pole which has a badge for length configuration into the scene. When this object is selected, a special configuration button will be available that, when clicked, will allow us to select the length configuration customization. Let's do this now. You will notice that the length configuration user interface is now visible. From here, we are able to type in a new length and select whether this length is in metric or imperial units. Crossarms also have a length configuration badge, as well as a switchable parts badge. Let's explore the switchable parts functionality next. We can snap a crossarm onto a pole, and while selected, we can click on the Customization button. You will notice that we have two types of customizations available for the crossarm. Like the pole, the length of the crossarm can be customized. Let's select the Switchable Parts customization this time. The user interface shows that we can toggle the visibility of the brace on the crossarm. Hitting the Next and Previous buttons will accomplish this for us. The last kind of customization we will explore is a color parts customization. Let's snap one of the insulators onto the crossarm and load up this customization. Observe that we can actually change the color of the insulator to one of the other colors available for it. We can also pick our own custom color by clicking on the Custom Color button. Notice how the color of the insulator updates in real time as we make modifications to the custom color. Tools: ducts, wires, vegetation, etc. When putting together our design, there are various tools available to us that will allow us to connect objects together via ducts and overhead wires. There are other tools that allow us to take length measurements within the scene, add labels to objects, and also make modifications to the vegetation. Let's start with a quick example of how to connect a primary pole and a transformer via a duct. You should already be familiar with how to drag and drop objects from the item catalog. The available tools will appear once we click the Tools button on the top toolbar. Let's click on the 4-inch duct tool to start the duct installation process. You will notice that there is now a wire and cable selection window available. From here, we can quickly select the type of wire that should go through the duct. When installing a duct, we can select a start object, followed by points representing the path of the duct, and finally, an optional end object. Ducts can always be stubbed, and if this is the case, then an end object is not required. In this demonstration, we will select the pole as the start object. Notice how we can then select additional path points on the ground. Finally, we select the transformer as the end object, and this triggers the duct to be drawn. We can always change the type of wire going through the duct by right-clicking on the duct and clicking on the Properties menu item. Ducts can be deleted similarly to how other objects can be deleted within the scene. Observe how if we move the pole, the duct will update itself to remain attached to the pole because the pole is considered as the start object. Also notice how the duct length label updates in response to these changes. We can turn off the duct lengths by clicking on the Layers button and turning off the checkbox for duct lengths. Now that we know how to connect objects using ducts, let's now use the Overhead Wire tool to connect objects above the ground. We will duplicate our existing pole and then drag it some distance away from the original. If we click on the Overhead Wire tool, we will be able to select a start point and end point for the wire. Once the end points have been selected, the wire will be drawn. It's at this point that we can further customize the wire. Similar to configuring ducts, we can select the type of wire we would like to use from the Wire and Cable selection window. The shape profile can also be configured. Initially, the default shape profile will be straight, but there are other shape profiles that allow the wire to bend and sag. Notice how the shape of the wire changes as we click through the different shape profiles. Using the Shape Intensity slider, we can control the intensity of the shape and make it more or less pronounced. We can also control the radius of the wire by moving the Wire Radius slider. By clicking on the Custom Shape button, we can have much more control over the shape of the wire. Let's do that now. Notice how movement handles appear at the end points of the overhead wire. By moving these, we can dramatically alter the shape of the wire. This is very useful for situations where we need the wire to bend around certain structures. While putting together a design, it may be important to determine the real-world distances between objects. We'll measure the distance between our two poles. First, select the Measurement tool from the Tools menu. Notice how snap points will appear when this tool is operating. We can take measurements from snap points to snap points, or even from different ground locations. To take the distance between our two poles, let's just measure the ground distance between them. Left mouse click on the ground location of the first pole, and while keeping the mouse button down, drag the mouse cursor to the ground location of the second pole. While we are doing this, notice how a measurement laser appears with the distance clearly visible. While dropping poles and other structures onto the ground, it may be important to clear the way of any trees that may be in the vicinity or on the line itself. Select the Vegetation Editor from the Tools menu. The tool operates in two modes. Trees can be added or trees can be removed. Let's switch into the Tree Removal mode. You'll notice a red circle on the ground which follows the mouse cursor. Simply click on the ground location of a tree to remove it. Observe how we are removing the trees along the line. If we want, we can switch into Tree Addition mode and add back some of the trees. There is a Reset button which will revert the trees back to their original scene configuration. Oftentimes, it may be advantageous to add labels into your design. Labels can often add clarity and are useful when sharing designs with colleagues. Start by clicking the Custom Label tool from the Tools menu. Labels are always snapped to objects, so that when those objects are moved, the labels move with them. Select the desired snap point to create the label at that location. We can easily customize the text of the labels and the colors of the label. The background color, outline color, and text color are all customizable. We are also able to style the text itself using the bold and italic checkboxes. The Auto Size checkbox is useful if you want the label to remain at a consistent size no matter how far you are away from it. If a design contains many labels, you may at some point want to hide these. Click the Layers button on the top toolbar, and then click the checkbox for Custom Labels to toggle the visibility of the labels. Archetypes. In other videos, we have learned how items can be dropped into a scene and snapped together to create more complex objects. The modeling tool allows for complex objects that have been created to be saved into a user's profile so that they can be used later on in other designs. These saved objects are known as archetypes. Once an archetype has been saved, it can also be made available to other users of the modeling tool. We will explore how to export archetypes and share them with other users later on. First, let's see how to create our own personal account that will store our archetypes for us and identify us to other users. Let's start off by clicking the Cloud Services button available on the top toolbar. Since we currently do not have an account, we will need to create one by clicking the Register menu item. Type in your email address and then wait for a registration code to be emailed to you. Once you've verified yourself, you can then provide additional information to complete your profile. Let's do this now. When selecting a profile photo, you can select one of the built-in ones or upload one of your own. Once your account has been created, you will be able to log in and begin exporting out archetypes. Click the Login menu item from the Cloud Services menu and type in your email and password to log in. Now that we are logged in, we can start exporting out archetypes. Let's start off with quickly creating a complex structure that we would like to save out to our profile. Once the structure has been created, right-click on the structure and select the Export Archetype menu item. An export window will appear that will show the thumbnail of the structure you're exporting. We can enter a custom name and also a description of the archetype. Once the Save button is clicked, the archetype will be saved to your profile and will now be available inside of the catalog. Observe the archetype's category within the item catalog. Clicking on it will reveal all of the archetypes that you have available to you. These archetypes consist of those which you have created, but also consist of those archetypes that other users have created and have made public. More on that later. Let's now drag and drop your new archetype into the scene. Another way to view the archetypes available to you is to click the Archetypes Browser button inside of the item catalog. A row will be visible for each archetype and will conveniently show which user created this archetype and when. Other information, such as its name and thumbnail, will also be displayed. We can also see whether the archetype is private or public. Clicking on an archetype row will automatically locate and highlight it within the item catalog. Let's now edit the properties of the archetype which we created earlier. First, let's check the My Archetypes checkbox to filter the rows. Now we can easily see our archetype and click its Properties button. We are free to modify the name and description of the archetype. We can also turn the Is Private checkbox off. In doing this, our archetype will be made public and be accessible by other users. If we want, we can delete the archetype by clicking the Delete button, and then confirm that we indeed want to delete this archetype. We are only permitted to edit and delete archetypes that belong to us. Electrical diagram. When putting together a design, there may be many structures that have been dropped into the scene. This is especially true when attempting to wire up and provide power to many different kinds of buildings. Designs will typically have ducts with wires going through them or overhead wires. The electrical diagram view is a convenient way to quickly see how objects within the scene are connected to one another. Let's demonstrate this now by loading the template for the 12-lot subdivision. Once loaded, we can now switch into the electrical diagram view by clicking the Options button and selecting the menu item for the electrical diagram. The first thing you will notice is that the diagram is arranged from left to right and that there are lines showing connections from one object to another. Each line also shows the wire type being used for that connection. We can toggle the wire type text on and off through the Options menu. All ducts and overhead wires will be represented by a line. Objects are displayed by boxes that contain the name and thumbnail image for that particular object. The scroll wheel can be used to zoom in and out of the diagram. By holding down the right mouse button and moving the mouse, we can pan the view. Items of interest can quickly be located via the Scene Objects window. For instance, let's locate all service boxes by performing a quick search for the keyword service. The list is now filtered to only show the items which have this keyword. By clicking on the Focus button, we can quickly locate that item within the diagram and see what is connected to it. Sometimes the user may want to move items around in the diagram to reduce clutter and produce more clarity. To accomplish this, simply left mouse click on the corresponding box and drag it to a new location. A box can be drawn around multiple boxes, and they can then be moved around as a group. Time machine. Sometimes when developing a design, it may be necessary to revert back to a previous iteration of the design and then proceed to modify and make refinements from that version. The time machine allows for this kind of functionality and is more robust than the undo and redo system that the modeling tool offers. Under the Options menu, click the Time Machine menu item. A graph will be displayed that will show the extent of the design changes as a function of time. Using this graph, it's easy to see in which time periods no changes were being made to the scene. for example during group discussions and decision-making. It's also easy to see during which time periods the scene was rapidly evolving, as the line of the graph during these periods will have a steep slope. Using the mouse scroll wheel, we can zoom in and out of the graph. By holding down the right mouse button and moving the mouse, we can pan the view. Observe how there are points on the graph line. These points represent those moments in time the user can revert back to. Clicking on a graph line point will display a Revert menu item. Clicking on this will revert the design back to that particular moment. Each point on the graph has a corresponding box item within the timestamps window. These are time-stamped and provide a breakdown of the number of objects, number of ducts and wires, and other metrics within the design at that particular time. Clicking on one of these boxes is equivalent to clicking on its corresponding point in the graph. A Revert menu item will appear, allowing you to revert back to that moment. Thanks for joining us on this Distribution Design Modeling Tool, or DDMT tutorial.